Gonna start with a brief intro of, of this event. So welcome everyone. This is one of the Sauder Management Consulting Club workshops in the series of consulting live workshops where we try to introduce you to industry players, leading industry players, and get more insight of what it is to work in consulting and what can you expect moving forward if you want to move into this industry or if you want to advance within this industry. Today we have a very special guest that's coming to us from Europe, from Croatia. Actually, there's a 9-hour difference, and we really appreciate his efforts to speak to us at 11 p.m. in the evening. John has been starting his career in Vancouver. He's a UBC alum, and then switched to Europe and developed his career there. He's going to talk in more depth about that. Just want to do a few housekeeping things here. We're going to let John introduce himself and start a presentation about his path and his experience. He's been graceful enough to tell us that you can ask questions along his presentation. There's no special points when you can ask. So just raise your hand. You have the function in Zoom to raise your hand, and we'll call you out and ask your questions. We have about 1 hour planned for tonight. Maybe we can stretch that to 15 minutes extra. No, we have to be mindful of John's time. It's quite late in there, and I don't know how much wine he has left to keep him going through the night. That's about it. So this workshop has been organized by the SMCC. If you want to learn more about the SMCC, Sauder Management Consulting Club, please go to ubcsmcc.com, and we're always looking for talented people to work on our engagements with leading industry partners and welcoming your resumes throughout the year. I'll pass it on to John here. Thank you for being with us tonight, John.
Great. Thank you, Daniel, David, Satyam. Good meeting you guys, and hello to everybody. Yeah, I'm actually reverted back to coffee at 11 p.m. my time, so keeping it going, right? I've got a presentation, so I guess I'll share the presentation. It's nothing special. It's just kind of talking notes to go through, but maybe it'll ease any discussion to get going. So just let me share my screen for a second. So I'm the country managing partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers in Croatia, but just stepping back a bit, roots, I'm from Vancouver. I'm actually a Vancouverite. I'm born and raised in Vancouver with, son of immigrant parents. So my parents both came from Croatia. And so I grew up actually up until kindergarten, I didn't speak English. I grew up speaking Croatian. And then once I started kindergarten, obviously English became my native language. So fast forwarding, class of '88, British business degree in commerce, or bachelor's degree in commerce. I had academic and soccer scholarships. And after this, I'm not going to refer to soccer as soccer. I'm going to call it football because I live in Europe. That's what they call it. But I mention that because it's a big part of my life throughout my career. I did start and from a point of view of recruitment. I started with Ernst & Young. I came right out of UBC, and it was very interesting the way UBC had organized at that time, at least from an accounting and auditing perspective, for people coming out, getting an accounting major in accounting. We had interviews set up through the university with at that time, you guys have heard of the Big Four. At that time, it was called the Big Ten. So I'm really dating myself back in the late '80s, the Big Ten, which eventually, became smaller through these mergers that occurred, and that's part of what happened later on. And one anecdote was, I did play soccer for UBC, and had a lot of success there, and I always wanted to be a professional footballer, but my parents made me study, so I listened to my parents. I carried through with school, and I'm glad I did. But even when I started with EY, I was continuing with my football career, be it amateur at that point in time. And there was an anecdote in my first month working at EY. I'm talking to the partner who actually hired me and who was involved in the recruiting process. And I was asked to go with the national team to play futsal, which is like indoor soccer on an international tournament in Australia. It was a world championship. And I said, I need to get a couple of weeks off. And his view was, don't worry, we'll get our pound of flesh out of you sooner or later. And that's the consulting world. That's the business world. It's like when you start, from my experience, and I don't say that to new hires coming into PwC now in Croatia, but that is kind of what happens, right? They get the pound of flesh out of you, but you get a lot out of that, right? There's a fair exchange, let's put it this way, right? I did for years, and I've shared it with my wife and my kids, is that, you know, I passed the UFI exam on my second try, which was a great experience to pass it. And passing the exam was, you know, they make you wait 3 months to get the results, and then they do the horrible thing of telling you to either call in or come to the institute and pick up your envelope to get your results. I guess today it would probably be much different. It'd be digitally sent to you, and no questions asked. But back in the days where we didn't have internet yet, you know, this is how it was done. And you know, when I passed, I didn't want to open the envelope until I was in the car driving away, because at the institute people open their envelopes and shouting for joy because they passed. And you know, I was like, oh my God, what if I failed? I don't want to, you know, I don't want to go through this. And then I realized, in looking while I was driving in the car, I realized the envelope was really thick and they had an application for membership in it. I realized, oh, I must have passed. And then I was stuck in traffic on a Friday morning, screaming in the car saying, hey, I passed. Whereas, you know, I could have done it a bit more elegantly somewhere else. Anyways, fast forwarding, I was with E&Y, and great experience with them. I think they're a top firm, and we experienced at one point in time some downsizing, which ironically happened at a time when I was thinking of leaving anyways, because I wanted to pursue football. And I knew that through that period, those 3.5, 4 years at E&Y, that I didn't want to be an auditor. This was not for me. Okay, so, you know, many of you may, you know, I'm not sure where you are in your careers or in your thoughts, but I just thought I've got to do something else. But first thing I do is I'm going to play football, play soccer. And that's what happened. Was I left and said I'd never do this again, and went and played in the Canadian Soccer League at that point in time. Eventually, you know, through stints with the national team, and I moved to Europe in 1995 to play there. Ended up from Germany to Croatia. So long story short, I sort of followed my dream that way, thinking this is great, only to have things really turn around in a different way, unexpectedly. And that's where an opportunity came after all this experience. I came back to Vancouver at the end of '95, and right at that point in time, about, you know, I thought, okay, you know, this went the way it went, but I got a call from a colleague of mine who's also a PwC alumnus, and she was with Price Waterhouse, working in Hungary, but looking with her Croatian roots to start PwC, or start PW, sorry, at the time, in Croatia. And, you know, it was still bombs falling, wartime. There was a, you know, a war there from '91 to '95. And, you know, I get a call in, I think it was like September of '96, saying, hey, you know, would you like to come out? And long story short, I accepted that. And, you know, a lot of my reasoning there was, you know, the war did end. I'd spent 6 months playing football there right after the war had ended. And, you know, a year later, I say, yeah, you know, I'm really curious about this. I was single, I was not married, and, you know, I had no attachments. So I said, I'll try this. And I agreed to a 2-year secondment. And part of the, you know, thing here is, and this is where, you know, when people talk about what gets you to places, sometimes you got to risk, sometimes you got to get, you know, uncomfortable. You got to think about new experiences. I will say, whatever I talk about today, I've always looked at what my friends and counterparts who stayed in Vancouver, what they're doing. It's inevitable you compare your lives and your careers, right? This is one of the things that goes on. It's kind of a trade-off sometimes. And don't get me wrong, but Vancouver to me is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I have no regrets leaving it, but I miss it, right? And I'm actually, as I'm sitting here in my home office, I'm looking at a picture of downtown Vancouver, Falls Creek, and Yaletown, and, you know, I like it. I miss the place, right? But, you know, you build your futures, you go other places, and you accept where you are as well. You got to create something new. And so, you know, this is getting out of the box and getting out of your comfort zone. But we were opening an office. You're the first 2 people on ground. It is kind of exciting, kind of almost got a romanticism to it. It is my parents' country, so, you know, it's a country where my roots are from. And I'd only been there a couple of times before, but, you know, it wasn't really Croatia yet, right? So it was a chance to do something. And like I said, 2 years, I think I could live with that, right? When I got there, obviously it's a very different place than it is today. So I got there in January of 1997. And I've always told the first 6 months, always most difficult. I'd lived away before, but, in North America and places like this, playing football or whatever. But you move away from your friends, from your family. I got engaged about a month before I moved. So, left my fiance in Vancouver. And, it was a change that it changes you. I'll be honest, right? And if you make it through, and I know people, I say this because there are others who came and they didn't survive in terms of they didn't stay, they left, right? They missed home, they missed the comforts of their home, they missed the culture, they missed a lot of things, right? And I stuck it out, and I have to say, I find myself, I'm always a very positive person, very optimistic person. I think I have inherent, I call it Canadian values. I still consider myself a really strong Canadian, who has got a very multi-ethnic culture behind him. And just, I view myself, growing up in Canada, I looked at myself as being a Croatian, as being a minority because of my last name, because of the way people look at you. And when I was, coming up, starting to work there, it was a very Anglo-Saxon environment, right? And that was fair, that was good. So I have this Canadiana that's part of me everywhere I go. You move away, you come to this place where you kind of, you know the language, but you don't know it that well. Like I said, I that was my first language, but till age 5. After that, I learned it bit by bit, but you're not fluent as you should be. And I come there and realizing I'm away, and in that period of time, there's a lot of things inside me that changed, that kind of harden you. It makes your skin thicker. You become more assertive. These are the sort of things that happened for me, and it was part of basically acclimatizing to the place, right? One thing is the climate itself, it's where you're at. The other thing is the people and the way they treat you and the way they look at you. And so what was part of the adapting, and right now I think about it, I go, no big deal. But when I think about it, yeah, there was hard moments. I came in and, there was 2 of us on ground, but we were working with a local audit and tax and consulting firm, but they were working with us. We had the brand, they had the manpower. And so we're working together, and I could see there was resentment because, there's people a lot older than me. There's others who are my age, and there's a few that were younger, but, they're wondering who I was. And you're going to find this funny, but there's points in time in my first couple of years there where people thought I was a spy, because I was this guy who came in from, it doesn't matter if you're from Canada, they say you're from America. And Daniel, you can attest to this, but I mean, he's the American, right? That's what they say. And, and to top it off, I played football very well, which is the national sport there. Like, okay, there's something, they don't understand this. You're playing our sport, but you're from there. This is not right. And so, there's a few attempts to undermine me. We went through that, ironed it out, but okay, it's kind of, getting a cold bucket of water poured on your head a few times. You need to understand where you're at. And the culture was different, based on many things. There's status, there's connections, there's people wondering, why are you there? You came from Canada. That's a great place. Why would you ever leave? Why would you come here? This is hell. They just came out of a communist regime. And so, I could argue all I want why I'm there, and I could argue and say, have you ever lived in Canada? No, I haven't. Well, then you can't tell me what it's like. But the real thing is, eventually you start to understand where they're coming from. I'm not going to say that we would all be the same if we came from the same point there, but that's part of really business-wise, as a consultant, as an auditor, to get into their mindsets and understand where they are. It's very, very important to help you move forward, to actually, I won't say add value to it, but to actually really function at the best level you can, right? It gives you insight so that when you are talking, you can actually, start to build trusted relationships. And this is eventually what, where we're going for. My business creation, as much as I thought I was prepared when I got in my first client meeting, which a couple months later, I was shocked. I was frozen. I thought we're speaking two different languages. Okay, so I came into the meeting, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be managing this. I don't know what the heck to say, because I feel stupid speaking like I'm doing ABCs while these guys are like doing quantum physics the way they're speaking. So it took time. It took time to be. It took being embarrassed several times, the way you speak, you're red-faced, people in the room are red-faced, but you get through it and you start learning and they start accepting you. And, sometimes you like the elephant in the room, but you stop breaking too much, so much porcelain every now and then, it's less and less, right? So it worked out better. One of the things I always say, and I've talked to this, there's a lot of Canadians, Canadian expats living in Croatia, and we talk about different things, but one thing I say is that we keep our value system. And I'll tell you guys right now, I've had many people say to me, you Canadians, the thing we like about you is because you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because it's going to put some money in the back of your pocket, right? So these are values that are there. That's integrity, there's good intentions, strong work ethics, optimism, always having a positive mindset, which at the time was very contrary to the local culture. You have to understand, people coming out of a war and having a so-called foreigner come in, why are you so smiley and happy all the time, right? Like, you didn't go through a war, you didn't grow up here, you don't understand, right? And I'm sure that's true for many cultures around the world. If somebody's experienced that, it's true. This stuff happens, and you can't sit there and argue and say, yeah, you're right. I understand you. This is why I'm here, and you say, we are where we are. We got to keep moving forward, right? In 1998, there was a global merger. So Coopers and Lybrand became, merged with Price Waterhouse and became what is today known as PwC. And that's where we ended up with the big four. It was the big five at the time. So, for us, it doubled our office size from 40 to 80. And added some more dynamics to the way we're working. For me, in this period of time, and like I said, very much still attached to Canada, now recently married, but traveling a lot for business. And, I'm traveling to places that I'd never been before. I'm going to Paris and London, Vienna, Italy, all on business. And, talking to my friends, and everybody go, yeah, this is where I was this week, this is where I'm going next week. And they're going, oh my God, man, your life is so cool. And, you're kind of thinking, yeah, it is actually pretty good. Although you don't really see much of those places when you're doing business there, or when you're working, or you're attending conferences or courses, or, it was more accounting, auditing, this sort of stuff. So, but it starts to build a bit of a background for you where, in the future, you travel much more and you see much more of these places eventually, but you have to, set up a base and go jump through certain hoops at certain points in time. I put football plus business is win-win. In Croatia, as in most parts of Europe, if you were involved in football, or let alone played it like I did, it actually was good for business. It was good for, interacting with people. I will say that today the corporate world has a lot more gender equality than it did then. Okay, at that time, most of the C-suite or CFOs and so on and so forth, most of them were men. And so this football thing kind of worked really well in this respect. It still does today, but it varies from client to client. That's all good. But at that point in time, it was, it was also an icebreaker for me to kind of, get more involved in some of the relationships we're building with our practice. Now, one of the things that wanted to talk about was rising up in the ranks to country managing partner. One thing is to become country managing partner. The other thing is just to become partner. And this is for me, there was a major upskilling journey for me. Yeah, I had my CA, or CPA now. It's called they changed it to CPA, but it was a CA at the time. I had my business degree out of UBC, but when I arrived there, I'd been playing professional soccer for about 5 years, and I needed to work on a few things, as I was a little bit disconnected from the professional workspace. I will say, and I put this in because I reflected on a couple of things, and one of the things that, or two of the things that two classes that I took at UBC prior to getting my bachelor's degree, one was public speaking, which many of you have probably taken, and maybe it's common to take it, but it was an elective, and I took practical writing. Practical writing was great because there was a lot of writing I had to do at the time, from financial statements to memos and this sort of stuff, and to be articulate was very important. But the other part, public speaking, is coming very handy then and later on as I gradually progressed through the ranks of the firm. And I say that because when I started at UBC, I was scared silly to speak up in class. I mean, very, very, shy about presenting. And the public speaking course actually started to, open my mind to different ways of doing this, realizing, I have a voice like anybody else. If I can respect everybody else speaking, they should be able to respect me speaking, and I have something to say. At PwC, we have excellent L&D programs, professional development for all levels of people in the firm. So obviously I had access to this, and I had to actually engage in this, and this helped a lot. Client experience, and I will refer to some of them in a little bit, but I worked in various industries in terms of being an auditor, and the other part is working literally around the clock at times. And I'm coming from the perspective of an auditor. It's not the same as a consultant, but the hours sometimes are the same. And you do work sometimes around the clock, you pull all-nighters, or you get a few hours sleep, but you're so wired by the experience and you're focused on the goal of getting things done that time just goes by, and you just keep going. And there's a few nights, even being a newlywed, where my wife is expecting me home at 6 and I came home at 2 in the morning. I mean, we laugh about it now, but that was real life for us for quite a while. Working a lot, which is part of that is catch up. Part of that is a learning curve. When I first did move in there, it wasn't just doing audit, it was also doing advisory stuff, because we didn't have a full office set up. We were just starting, and as deals came in, we got involved into doing due diligence, deals and transactions and stuff like this, where you literally, it didn't matter, you switch between the two, and you learn a lot in this progress. When there's when there's transactions going on, these are usually very urgent projects where somebody needs answers, they need an analysis, need to get done because they're making decisions, and they're going forward, and there's a lot of money at stake. And so in this period, my upskilling and at some points reskilling really accelerated. Okay, so where I went from somebody who anyways, going forward, it's in this period, I moved from assistant manager to senior manager, which happened after a slow start. I think it happened, moved pretty quickly, and then you started getting more relaxed in terms of the technical side of delivering the audits and these due diligence work, and started to focus a bit more on markets and relationships. And what I want to say is, and especially, I've been CEO here for 5 years, and networking, true relationship with clients, like strong relationships, genuine relationships, this is really a big part of business, right? It's more important than the actual delivery. And, so networking and being exposed to as many partners as possible from the PwC perspective was part of my career path. And I was told, once I made senior manager, I was told, listen, we see you having a partnership path, but if you stay in Croatia, I mean, you're not gonna get there, right? Because we're too small a practice. and we've got to get you somewhere else to get that exposure, so that like many organizations, to become a partner, you need people voting on you. We have a thing called soundings. So when somebody gets nominated for partner, it's a process that takes months. If you're going to make partner next year, that process begins now. And then, your business case is set out. But then the soundings come from people who had experience with you, who are saying, hopefully good things about you. There'll be times if somebody sees something bad. If they do, then, you might not make it through. And so, we started to work on a plan to get me to be partner and decide on where and when I'm going to go somewhere else, right? And in the end, I chose Moscow as my secondment. It's a big office and it's in Central Eastern Europe. And the way PwC is organized, Croatia is part of the Central Eastern European practice. We're part of the global firm, but that's where you should aim to be, to get as many partners exposed, or you exposed to as many partners as possible. In doing so, I did, I chose to go up there, and I chose to be part of what we call IFRS. That's the International Financial Reporting Center. It's accounting technical group. It's very important from an audit perspective, but they're also in a consulting group, because people consult with this group. Now, I had the choice, believe it or not, to go to London. I got an offer from the London office to go there, which my wife was very happy to, receive the offer. But I got a hint. A little birdie told me it would be better if you stayed in Central and Eastern Europe, and Moscow is the place you should go. So I turned down London. I still have regrets of that one, because we love London. Okay, we love going there. But Moscow is a pretty special place. So I went there, and I spent 2.5 years there. And I'll tell you what, it's probably the best decision, one of the best decisions I made in my life. Incredible experience. I don't know about you, and if any of you have ever been to Russia. I'd never been before, and growing up in Canada, I always thought of Russia as some gray, really dingy place, because of media, because of the things we learned at the time, because of the Cold War at the time. When I got there, it was just it was something completely different. And the office, by the time I left, the office was well over 2,000 people. And in my role there, what I got to do, amongst other things, is obviously for all Central Eastern Europe, we were one of the technical hubs where teams would either send financial statements for review, or we'd have IPOs going on where we'd be reviewing the financial statements, or people would have technical issues that need to be resolved. And then what's important here, I've put a few things on the slide there, but one thing is to gain new knowledge, technical accounting knowledge in this case, but to actually be technically sound. The other thing is issue resolution, which is something, it doesn't matter what industry, and you're going to have this sort of stuff going on. And if you want to be a leader and move ahead, you want to get good at this. And one of the things that I actually really became good at, and I attribute this to my Canadian background of being very politically correct, but firm, is that I had a lot of situations, and you got to understand, I'm in my group, I had mostly Russians, and I had a few other people either from Slovakia, Czech Republic, these sort of places that are in my team. And when you get a technical issue, it's one thing to write it out and send the response and give the advice. The other thing is when we have an audit team that has promised the client, a certain accounting treatment that's really important to them. They're on a market. They say, yeah, we agree with you. And then they come to consult with you and they realize they've given the wrong answer, because the standards themselves are principles based, and it creates, some judgment calls. And I found myself in a few situations where, I was coming into an office, into a meeting with the engagement team from PwC and the client, who wanted me to say yes to what they were proposing. Whereas my whole goal was not only to say no, but to have them walk out of the meeting an hour later, thanking me for it. And so that's a black and white sort of scenario, but I actually got pretty good at that. And with Russians, you got to understand that whenever they're happy about something, especially clients, they want you to drink vodka, they want to celebrate, right? But the good thing about it is that they actually appreciate what's happening. You know, they listen to what you're saying. And again, I refer to the fact that you have to get to understand their perspective. I did that in Croatia, and I realized, you know, I'm gonna have to understand this client's perspective. Why would he be so, you know, upset at getting an answer no for something? And you know, then you know, when you understand where they're coming from, you can actually explain to them why it's actually to their benefit for something. And how you presented it, and being very you know, firm, but at the same time not having an ivory tower approach to things is very important. And this is what I found that some of my colleagues were unfortunately having that approach. You know, this ended up making me a bit of a fan favorite because of the approach I had. It was being practical, it being empathetic, but at the same time delivering literally the same message, the same you know, the same solution, right? And be it, you know, only from a accounting technical point of view, and actually something you learn to do in life, and you learn to do in any sort of perspective you have in the business world, is to try and have that approach. It actually gets people to listen to you. When somebody's empathetic to your perspective, they actually, you know, it makes you feel like, hey, you know what, I can relate to this person. I want to listen to them. They understand me, and maybe what they're saying is the best, in my best interest, right? And so, you know, this ended up being a great learning lesson for me, and obviously a skill to attain going forward. I will say one thing, that I've been married for almost 24 years, and doesn't necessarily work with my wife, but it does work with clients and staff, right? So it's, you know, used with caution. The other part is developing presentation skills. I talked about public speaking, and one of the things we do at PwC, at least what the technical group does, is they're responsible for rolling out technical updates and presenting. And at that point in time, you know, this is back 2004, 2005, 2006, we were traveling all over Central Eastern Europe to present to offices live in a classroom environment. So you're there as an instructor, and you have, you know, your PowerPoint slides, you're doing all this, but you've got to give around, you know, around the slides and the bullet points, you've got to talk a lot around making it more understandable, right? Making it something that people can grasp, and making it easy for them, you know? And there's sometimes, depending on the country, and there's language barriers, because even though English is the universal language of PwC, you're going to have people in different countries that are going to have difficulties understanding, or difficulties themselves expressing what they want to say. And that's just what it is, right? So, you know, there was some interesting scenarios around that, but I have to say that that's one of the things I enjoyed a lot eventually, was actually, for somebody who was shy to get up in front of people and speak, let alone with a microphone, to actually really enjoy having the mic in my hands and talking to people and relating to them. And at one point in time, you know, I don't know if you ever had that situation, but I realized there's no reason to ever get nervous, because I knew more than anybody else in the room about the topic, right? And you know, when you get when you prepare, and you know your material, then it's about actually making it more fun for the people, so that they can get more out of it. Now, that was a big upskilling point in time for me. And you know, when my secondment ended, I came back to Croatia with, you know, idea I'm now gonna, you know, go into become partner, and that's what happened. I came back in 2007, and I made partner. In PwC, to make partner, I mentioned to you, you know, exposure to all these partners. In Russia at the time, they had over 80 partners. It was the biggest firm in Central Eastern Europe in the PwC network. And so I had you know, I didn't have exposure to all 80, but I exposure to a huge number of them. And so I had the soundings, so-called soundings, people saying good things about me. And then the other thing is that you now have to go in front of a partner panel and, you know, speak in front of them. They've got your business case. They know all about you, and now it's their chance. It's the last piece of due diligence in the process for them to decide whether you should be a partner or not, right? So it's literally a very similar process today as it was then. They fine-tune a few things, but you know, in the end, it comes down to maturity. Nobody's going to test you in the technical knowledge, really. It's more about seeing what kind of business person you are, and and also understanding your areas for development, right? Because we always have areas for development. This is what we go by here, right? And thinking that you don't have areas for development means you're not on the right path. You always do. Everybody does. The CEO always has areas for development because you want to be better, and the world is constantly changing. Our market's constantly changing, so you got to be thinking about that. And if you are thinking about it, you realize, okay, you got to work on something else, or you got to develop new relationships, or you got to address certain issues, right? So this is what the whole process is about, and becoming partner is just saying, yeah, you know what, you've done what you need to do to get over this line, but now you're starting over again, right? And that's literally what it was, right? I had one. I thought it was a funny anecdote from my partner panel because they give you a half an hour in the first section of the panel, and then a few hours later you come back and you have a full 1 hour session. Now I have the benefit of English as my native language, and so for me it's easier to speak in English in the panel. Everything's in English, and I had the panel members who are all experienced partners who can if they want to be rough and mean, they can take shots at you and see how you're going to react, right? It's a testing process. And when we came in for the second part, which is an hour long, the first part is sort of an introductory, talking about your background, but the second part is where anything goes. They can ask anything they want, and depending already on the impression you have, they may, or if somebody has they're not certain about your case, they might take shots at you. But I had a pretty easy go at it. I just thought it was pretty funny that the first question that I was asked was that they said, John, you've shown you're a good speaker. Are you a good listener? And my immediate response was, well, I've managed to stay married for 10 years so far, so I think I am, right? And I got a good response from these guys, and in one respect, they said, it showed a level of maturity that they want to have for a partner coming into the practice, right? Somebody who, can laugh, can make them laugh, and bring some life experience to the situation. So again, when I look at when I made partner, excuse me, at age 42 in North America. And when I was, I say growing up in Canada, when I was at E&Y, partners were usually making their case at age 32, 33, right? But this is a different practice and a different set of business cases. So, in some cases it took more time, and I see that the average entry age of partners is a little bit later than it is in North America, right? But again, that's I'm not saying we're trying to change it. There is no fixed age that you should come in at. It's when you're ready, right? And when you have a business case. So when I came back to Zagreb, one of the things was that you're in this technical comfort zone where everything you see, you're talking about technical stuff, which from a business perspective, clients don't really care. They do and they don't, but maybe if you're talking to the chief accountant, not when you're talking to the CFO or to the CEO. And so this is my next upskilling sort of phase in my life and in my career, was to become a true commercial business person and develop an ability to sell, and not just audits, but anything we can do. And again, technically, if you can identify issues and opportunities, that's great, but they're not all around accounting. In fact, very few are around accounting. It's more around other business things, from also business combinations, bank debt covenants, or relations with banks, investors, potential investments, and KPIs to help them manage and make their life and business easier. This is where you have to be looking, and part of that is really sometimes creating demand, and that's what we talk about, value added. It's about creating demand, and you do that not just to the clients you already have, but also through building your network and exposing yourself to the public, to the business public, I say.
John, we have one question from Alan, if you don't mind.
Sure, please.
John, not so much a question. I'm relaying from Abdullah. He was asking your response to "Are you a good listener?" I think that was it. Was that right, Abdullah?
Yeah, sorry about that. My internet connection is not really good, so John's voice broke at that moment. I wanted to know the answer.
Okay, no problem, Abdullah. I just basically said, "Are you a good listener?" I said, "Well, I've managed to stay married for 10 years. What do you think?" Right? And they liked it. It went across well, right? From a human perspective, everybody could relate. Anyways, moving into, you know, this creating demand and building a network, and you know, speaking of public panels, you have to understand in Croatia, when you get into these public events, it's usually in Croatian. And I could choose to speak in English. There's often foreigners there who speak in English, but being the position I was in, shouldn't be speaking English. I should be speaking Croatian, right? And clients appreciate that. And that was uncomfortable at times. And it's one of those things, is getting out of your comfort zone. I think I put it a little bit later on, is to say that, you know, you've got to sometimes get very uncomfortable to become successful. I truly believe that, because you've got to bring out skills and find new skills, or find new ways to you know, deal with issues and deal with the situation you're in, to bring you to another level, right? And once you pass that, you realize, okay, there's more to go, right? So there's, again, always areas for development. There are always opportunities for development. Speaking on these panels was one thing. I found, you know, in terms of building a personal network, very interesting. I have three kids. Okay, two of them are, you know, adults now. One's a teenager, but when they were smaller and going to school, again, you meet, you know, they have friends. Those kids have parents, and a lot of these parents are business people. And all of a sudden, I'm building more of a network just through my kids and through my wife's friend than I am through what I'm doing. Right? It was actually quite easy at certain times, just because it was part of the natural part of life, right? So that worked well. But you find in the end almost every opportunity you can to try and do this. The other thing is client experience. And you know, I had as part of the PwC network, we didn't have so much these multinationals that we're dealing with in Croatia. We had a lot of them, but they weren't all our clients. And they weren't our biggest clients, that's for sure. So we actually dealt with a lot of local blue chips, which in and of itself was a fantastic experience for me to be, you know, working with them on whatever project, but particularly audits. We get to know the business, you discuss their plans, and you start developing relationships with them, and also understanding their mindset, where they're coming from, and where they're going forward, right? And this helps you in many ways. It educates you in terms of the macro and microeconomic environment in the country, and you can leverage off of these relationships, these discussions with others, and just build upon this, amongst other things, right? On the other side, I mentioned, you know, in 2016, I became CEO, and soon thereafter took on, through a bit of boldness on my side, an iconic audit. It was a group called Agricor. They're now called Fortenova. They're still our client, but to make a long story short, it was one of the biggest financial scandals in the country's history. And the audit was literally an audit of the country in many ways for the last 25 years, because it was such a big group, and it was like an octopus. It was attached to everything, and nobody would touch it. I found a way to get into it, and what this experience, amongst other things, it told me was, you know, I mean, you step up under pressure, of course, but it's just, again, keeping your values intact when times are toughest, really helps you. You know, you've got to believe that that's the right thing to do, and when you do the right thing, inevitably, even when times are dark, and there were some tough times through this, because there's a lot of public scrutiny, there's a lot of wealthy people who lost wealth because of it, not because of us, but because of what happened. But we were the ones, as an auditor, sometimes you come in, you're like the coroner. We're not the ones who made you die, we're the ones who said that you are dead, right? And that's what this case was about. And it had, you know, a bit of a very fraudulent flavor to it, and obviously a lot of high-profile people who were involved. And in the end of it, you know, the ultimate owner and his management board were all arrested, as were the auditors, the previous auditors. They've all been charged. Nothing has been finalized since then, but you know, it was a lot of media attention, and a lot of attention towards myself personally as well. But you know, I think all it did was really build our brand, and obviously build my personal brand as well in doing so. And what was more important for me was to build for my people, our team. I told you, we started in 1997 with 2 people. We're 250 people. And I felt when I came in as CEO, I need to come out, they needed a strong leader because the guy previous to me was not a strong leader. And they needed somebody strong and to help us move into a top position in our country. PwC is one of the, it's number 1, number 2 globally all the time. But in Croatia, we were at 3 or 4 at best for a long time. This brought us to number 1, both in terms of revenue, but also in terms of size and definitely in terms of brand awareness, right? And in terms of perception of the public and our quality. So, to get to that point, it took time. That didn't, everything happens for a reason, and the timing of things is also very important. And again, for me, I was ready for that experience at that point in time because of all my previous experiences. And that's kind of what helped me get through there. There's a lot of nasty details in this. There's public attacks in the media, and you've got to keep a cool head. You don't want your family to suffer. I had, my wife questioning whether I was doing the right thing. Realized later, everything was okay. But until somebody pats you on the back, you feel like the whole world's against you sometimes. And this is one of the things I had happen here. Like I said, got through it, stronger for it, better for it, and we keep moving forward. Right? One of the things we want to talk about as well is just say, what does my week look like today or these days? I don't have a lot of time to do bullet point 2, reading or reviewing, because I'm constantly in meetings, either internal meetings, teams, people, coaching. People management is the most important thing. If you're going to do anything, is people management is super important. I'll tell you right now. I've heard people say this in the past. It's never been more important in a consulting point of view, especially from a leadership position, is to have good people around you. I feel that I've been fortunate, as much as I've been, brave and sticking to my guns. I had over the years, being there from the start, obviously a few years away in Russia, but there's a generation of people who are now senior managers and directors who I feel like almost raised them in the firm here in Zagreb. They came out as university graduates, came into the firm, and I won't say I beat the crap out of them, but through coaching them and through drilling them, they are the team they are today, and they're the crux of the culture we have in the firm, which is a hardworking culture, a high performance culture here in Croatia, where the values are right. They're the global values that we have, and I'll touch on the global values in a second. But that's really important. And when there's people request, we use Google, so it's Google Calendar, and I'm telling you, unless I control it, and some a lot of times I don't, I'll just you look, and within a day, like, your calendar is full. There's people requesting meetings throughout the week and whatever, and a lot of them are internal. At the same time, my life is really about the markets and selling and external. And when I say selling, I don't really care so much to sell so much audit. It's more about the other stuff. The big ticket items are the consulting projects, are the deals projects, maybe some tax work. It's EU funding, which is a big deal. And we're just now starting to attack the public sector in Croatia, because before we didn't really think it was a safe sort of marketplace for us for the public sector, because there was corruption. There still is some corruption, but there was a lot of corruption before. So that's a big part of my time. And when I say management, local and regional, I have from a PwC perspective as well. My local management team, my local partners. There's 6 of us in the office now, 6 partners. But we're part of a bigger region and a cluster, and we also have regular meetings as well. It's clients or stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, from regulators to government officials, potential clients. There's NGOs. And in terms of NGOs, I'm the vice president of AmCham in Croatia. There's a thing called the Croatian Canadian Business Network, where I'm a board member. I'm actually a board member of the American School of Zagreb as well. And there's we've reached out to Croatian diaspora, and there's now a new association called the Crow Diaspora, where I'm also vice president. And I'm trying to use that to actually bring in business from around the world, bring in investment from around the world, with the global reach to all continents, literally. and trying to use my position at PwC to also help and make Croatia a better place, with more people coming back. It's not just a financial thing; it's a demographic thing. We're trying to get people, be it Croatian or not, to come and live here and work here, because it's a great place to be. It's a great place to live, and the more we have here, the better it will be. That's the way we look at it. My reading, reviewing, supervision, this sort of stuff, because of COVID, amongst other things, you can do a lot of stuff online. We do a lot of stuff online, and most of that stuff I have to find, either early in the morning or after hours to try and read. And it used to be the stuff I used to do all the time, and I kind of miss it because, it's the crux of the profession, and for delivery, you want to be on top of what's going on. So, that's something that I do try to find time around when I can do it. Weekends, since my kids were small, and it's about 15 years, I don't work weekends. I just said no more. I worked about, I guess, 7 or 8 years like a madman. I got into a position that just said, you know what, I have to be there for my kids. It's very important. And I have, like I said, one of my older son's 20, my daughter's 21, attending university. The biggest compliment I ever got was my kids saying, "You're always there for us," and that's, I'm grateful for that. To have the opportunity to do that, but I had to make at least the weekends available. Right, this is the thing. Right? So, I'm not giving advice, but I'm just saying, some people face different situations. Just think about it. It's one of those things that at one point in time in the career, you can go all out. There's other times you gotta, I think, make some choices. And, it helps. It helps your professional life as well. It helps you be a bit more fresh and more happy about where you're at, right? What I'm mostly working on, and I think we can, some of you can relate to this. We have a transformation strategy, and I'm driving this not just in Croatia, but from the Southeast European level. We have a 9-country cluster within Central Eastern Europe that we call Southeastern Europe. We treat as a territory. I don't like the term Balkans, but it is the Balkans. It's former Yugoslavia, and it's Bulgaria, more or less. And we work a lot cross-border, especially on the consulting and advisory side. There's a lot of work here. There's all kinds of projects, but even internally, we're doing digital transformation and operational transformation. We're moving in many parts of business, and in particular in audit, we're using shared service centers and competency centers where the labor is cheaper. So I know in the States, in North America, they send a lot of things to India. We send things to Macedonia, to Ukraine, there's certain centers in Poland or Russia, but those are our centers. At the same time, we have a focus on digital upskilling and automation, which means that, we want to give people, we want to inspire people, not just to upskill, but to be innovative, to think about different things, because they're the ones who are really in the nitty-gritty details. We have a lot of automated tools that we use in the practice already. We build upon these things. There's bots being created regularly. We're focusing on innovation, startups and innovation in particular. It's a group started a couple of years ago, and we've had a lot of success. And we're trying to find we're using that as another way to penetrate into the market. There's some great innovators in Croatia. You've heard of the Tesla vehicle. Well, Tesla was Croatian. At least he's born in Croatia. Okay, put it this way. He's an ethnic Serb, but he was born in Croatia and raised in Croatia, and finished where he finished. But we have a lot of great innovators, and the interesting thing is that I did a couple events in London at some of the startup hubs there. They were focusing on Southeastern Europe, and I met some people there, and I realized that the British, amongst others, were very, very well versed in terms of where the talent was. And they're telling me, yeah, we know in Zagreb, but there's also Rijeka, there's Osijek, there's Split. We've been there, and they get deals coming up, and the point is that they're investing and parting that capital before locals were, to bring that talent to London, and all of a sudden, whatever that innovation was, it becomes a British product, right? And that's fine, but it's being, if it's in Croatia, we're trying to keep it in Croatia, right? And set up that sort of environment, or help with that environment to get there, and eventually down the line we'll hopefully have some of the unicorns, more new unicorns coming out. You may have heard of Infobip, Infobip is a Croatian company that actually the guys who started it, they literally enhanced or enabled text messaging, off your phones. They're part of that technology. Parking via text message, paying for parking via text message actually came out of this, amongst other things, right? There's Rimac, which is the new electronic vehicle. You may have heard of it. They announced last week a joint venture with Bugatti. It's another one of our clients. They're the second unicorn in Croatia, and pretty exciting stuff there, right? So, I'm trying to, be focused on this stuff. I have to say again, I'm an auditor, but that's the last thing I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about this stuff, which is much more on the consulting side, business advisory, and building relationships with these people every way we can. Like I mentioned already, public appearances, this sort of stuff, and I'm doing stuff I never thought I would do. Going on live TV in Croatia, I did it last month. PwC has this global CEO survey that they usually launch at Davos. Our global CEO, Bob Moritz, usually presents it at Davos every year. Obviously, Davos is not the same as it was because of COVID and this sort of stuff, but we launched it, and we had a Croatian version to it. And I ended up going live on TV. I thought it was going to be on for 5 minutes. I ended up being on for half an hour speaking in fluent Croatian. I have to say, I think it's pretty good. And talking about this global CEO survey, and even a couple of years ago, that would have been way out of my comfort zone, but I'm still challenging myself and saying, yeah, I have to do it. If anyone's going to do it, I've got to do it. I'm the CEO, so I've got to take it upon me. And you prep for these things, and you get ready, and you do them, right? So, I see myself more, again, in a consultant role than anything else, but try to lead by example. And as I said, attracting FDI where I can. If I'm going to compare Europe and Canada in terms of work culture, today, I think it's very similar. Maybe we wear suits and ties a bit more than you do in Canada or the States, and I guess we like to do that. But I think that's really changed a lot through COVID as well. The mindset is what's changed the most, and that was one of the challenges. And I'll tell you, there's a two-sided challenge here. One is that I came into a part of the world that had a former regime. That former regime was communism. And when you deal with that, the work ethic was different. You used to work until 3 in the afternoon, and that's it. And usually, even when you're there, you're spending most of your time either having coffee or doing a brunch or a lunch, or they didn't get much done. And it was true even about the audit practice. It was very relaxed, and it is relaxed now, but people really, really work hard. And I'll tell you that because I pay a lot of overtime. People working overtime a lot, especially during the busy season. And one of the, I like to call it a nice thing. I have a friend who's visiting from Canada, and one of his neighbors or relatives works at our office in PwC in Zagreb. And he says, my God, Johnny, this guy, it's like he's from Vancouver. I go, but he's not. He's from PwC Croatia. But he has that mindset and that presence and that desire to get things done that you would find in North America. And at least that's what I would compare it to North America, because it's a different mindset, it's a different culture. But it took time to get to this point. It took a lot of coaching. It took a lot of courage and a lot of difficult discussions, and not just from myself, but from all my teams. In terms of projects, audit is audit everywhere in the world, and we've worked with the U.S. teams. There's one of my favorite clients is the Zagreb Brewery. It's part of the Molson Coors Group now. Not that I like beer a lot, but I have to say, growing up, my father worked for Molson Coors. Actually, it was called Carling O'Keefe. It was down in Kitsilano on West 12th. I spent a bit of time there, and it reminds me of my father. But it's that brewery that he worked at is now owned by the same group, by the group that owns the Zagreb Brewery, and we have a group audit scenario where we have to deal with the boys in Denver who run the group audit from there. We all do things the same way. There's no difference here, right? So it's just about getting it done and documenting well. I think the biggest difference is in respect of advisory projects, and like I said, you guys are a consulting group. You think about consulting. our market is not as mature as the North American market, and I don't know if it ever will be. And I see this across the board, but even in different parts of Europe, you know, the Czech market, the Polish market, it's much more mature. There's bigger populations. There's more foreign investment, a lot more public entities, publicly traded companies, and even the multinationals are there in big ways. So, you know, that's where I say, you know, the types of projects or the size of projects may be different. You know, we're a bit behind, but that just means to me that there's the best is yet to come. There's a lot more coming there, even though we're doing a lot of interesting things now. Right now, we've done a lot of things that tied to global governance funds, trying to help companies or economies really build and emerge. So it's still part of emerging markets, not a mature markets, but again, you still end up with very interesting projects, and you tie it into the fact that you have some super innovative companies like Rimac and Infobip there, and even Nanobit, which is a gaming company, guys from Zagreb who got bought out by a Swedish group. They're there as well. So you have a very diverse environment that can lead to all kinds of projects. Right? And one of the things that we also do is do a lot of, you know, joint work. PwC, we can't do everything. We can't do it all. And especially in smaller countries, you can't cover all spectrum, the entire spectrum of the consulting world. So, you know, we team up with others, especially when it comes to, you know, digital or technical or IT type projects. There's lots of others who'd like to work with us, and you know, with our brand and with some of our expertise and their expertise, we can actually be you know, successful when it comes to these tenders. Right? And in terms of challenges, again, I mentioned it before, but people are always a challenge. Mindset is a challenge, and the public sector is a challenge because of the government. It has evolved, but there's still challenges there, and we need to work with them to make things a bit better. But people and clients mindsets, we still have to work with them, not in the same way we did 20 years ago, but just actually moving forward. And I find the biggest challenge of perhaps millennials at times is just that we have to all be on the same page, try to be on the same page, and try to respect that. So this is some of the challenges there. And I mean, the rest I kind of already talked about. I will just say, check your ego at the door. I try to have that sort of approach to everything we do. And you know, believe it or not, I mean, when it comes to some of the teams and the juniors in our office, I mean, you still feel they respect. You know, you come in a room, whatever, and you're just trying to say, listen, it's just we're all equal here. Everybody has, you know, something valuable to say, and we're going to respect that. And that's kind of the culture we have throughout, right? And very important, right? So I'll leave it there. You know, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to talk through them.
Well, John, that was the most comprehensive view from the top I've heard, honestly, and I really appreciate all the level of detail that you shared. It's giving really in-depth to you what's happening, and I haven't heard anything like that, honestly. We had workshops, we had 10 workshops or so. They were all kind of specifically focused on certain parts of the consulting work and experience, and this is really wrapping it up all together real nicely. Especially for me, it's meaningful because of Croatian context, and it's hard to believe even now that this power culture has tuned down a bit, that it's more inclusive and like the equality is seeping in. But I wanted to ask you, and I'll open with questions. Please share any questions also. What's the next step for you now? So you seem to be very successful in this role, and you've been there for 13, 14 years. So where does a partner move next to? And did you have any attempts from other companies trying to poach you, move you to, I don't know, McKinsey, wherever else? How does that work?
Good question. I mean, so I'm 56 years old, and partners have to retire at 60, like it or not. So it's in the back of my mind every day. Actually, 4 years will go by like this, you know, by the next Euro, right? So as I say, I've been approached several times. Deloitte's in particular have approached me 3 times over the last since 2007. and there's reasons, there's good reasons for that, but I mean, I said no each time, even though I was very tempted the last time, because I was a little bit upset with some of the things going on at PwC. This is before I became CEO, but happy I didn't. There's a lot of clients who, and I've been asked during the years to become part of boards of companies, be it in Canada or in Croatia, but I'm not allowed to, you know, as part of PwC, and these are usually publicly listed companies. I would actually look forward to that in the future. At the same time, I've made a few investments as well over the time, and wouldn't mind actually being involved in some of those companies. There's some partnerships. So there's a lot of, you know, private equity companies here, and some of them are my good friends. And, you know, they kind of say we could definitely work together if I'm interested, you know, when the time comes. Right now, I see myself in Croatia for the next 4 years. There's always been a possibility of being named to regional leadership. I'm not, you know, that's just a question of somebody making a political decision. I have to say, sometimes PwC can be a political organization. I say unfortunately, but what would you expect? I mean, there's got to be something somewhere, right? Nothing's perfect. And I have been told that maybe I speak my mind too openly sometimes. So, you know, there's certain people in leadership who don't necessarily appreciate that, at least not in their agenda. I know them well, but you know, I'm fine staying in this position and just building the practice, making it bigger and stronger than ever, and also helping this country in any way I can in this role and in the other functions I have at this point in time. So.
Well, that sounds exciting. Like you won't be tuning down anytime soon, just taking a different track.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. You never know. You never know what tomorrow holds, right? So
yes.
You have to be ready.
Well, we have a few more questions for you from, I think Karan is the first, and then Antoine, and then Harneil.
Yeah.
Karan,
Yeah, John, thank you so much for telling us about your story. The fact that you played for like Dinamo Zagreb, like your story is packed with like so much awesome like events and so many different turns. But I just saw like Champions League football last season. I saw Dinamo Zagreb, and that was just really cool. It really stood out to me.
Awesome.
I had a couple of questions specifically around like digital transformation.
Yeah.
I'm in my undergrad right now, studying business and comp sci, and a lot of my past like internships and stuff have been focused on digital transformation.
Yeah.
I've only done that in Canada so far, and not really in developing countries, but something I want to do. Would you say that things like the cloud or automation, AI, they're developing a lot faster in developing countries, specifically for Croatia for you? And how do you sort of deal with, like you said that there's a lot of outsourcing to countries nearby, but in terms of recruiting like local people to work on it or local companies pushing that forward, what sort of strategies do you use, and do you model it after other countries, or do you have your own ideas?
Thanks for the question, Karen. That's excellent questions, actually. So, you know, in terms of the technologies and you know, from AI to virtual reality, all this stuff, it's coming up quick here. And you know, I talk about Croatia because they've got a lot of good developers. They have a very strong university in Zagreb that actually produces great people who get scooped up pretty quickly, and not by the big four, but they go either consulting firms or engineering firms. They're top people. Some of them ended up with Elon Musk, you know, working in other countries in Europe, working with Tesla, right? And so it just tells you the quality of the people. So, you know, I see that there's certain segments that can go really quickly. And like I said, it's not a huge market. We have about 4 million people or less, you know, and we have a brain drain occurring here, unfortunately. And the brain drain occurs because people don't see the vision or strategy that's going to keep them there for a long time. And they're smart, and they're going forward, and the market's open. You're part of the EU, so just, you know, companies from all over the world here, in addition, not just the EU, and they're scooping up the talent where they can, right? Which is great for them personally, but I think, you know, like I said, not to go down that path, but to say that, you know, it would be great to keep them there somehow. At the same time, yeah, artificial intelligence for sure is going quickly. Like I said, some of the, the two unicorns we have are totally related to technology and digitization. Well, okay, electronic vehicles is one thing, that's technology, but Infobip and Nanobit, they're two companies that are definitely there. So the talent's there. They think big. These guys are, they're going at it. It's just a question, are they going to stay here, right? That's the side of that. And then the second question was, sorry, please repeat it again. The second part of the question.
Oh, the second part of the question was about how you try to keep those companies
Yes.
in. So like, do you model it after other countries like incubator programs, or do you sort of focus in on trying to like, other strategies, I guess?
Yeah. In terms of, the hubs and stuff, there's already incubators here. There's a lot of them, there's a lot of hubs with a lot of talent, and there's both local angel investors, foreign, venture capitalists who are here, and they've created these hubs. They've invested and created a space for these companies to incubate and get ready to move forward, right? And we're trying. Our strategy right now is we're in a couple things. We're actually potentially going to switch offices in the next year and a half, and because of COVID and the transformations occurring, and talking about the office of the future, office is not what it used to be. It's not where you come and sit there and work alone in a pod. You can do that anywhere. So just where people meet. So we don't need that much space actually, right? And so we're hoping to actually set up our own little hub to have companies coming in and working beside us there. And that's our investment in them. And hopefully, they all know the PwC brand and they would like to be associated with them. We've started to build our skill set and our understanding there and our presence. And I think having a hub in our office would be something that would really help us go to the next step a lot quicker, build a reputation, the market presence, and show that we care. And obviously, you can't have everybody there, but you can have some quality teams there, which would be great. And in terms of sort of not an anecdote, but just adding to that, in terms of us hiring people, this is another thing that's changed from the audit perspective. In the future, we're not going to even hire people from university anymore because the strategy is to send that low value work, the repetitive tasks, to these service centers, right? And competency centers where the hourly rate is cheaper than it is here. But what we would do then is and I'm setting a program with a local university to create the new senior associate because where are we going to get them, right? We're going to have, and the interesting thing is, I've been trying to think out of the box as well, try to think about, what's the next step. It's not just accepting strategy blindly, it's to say, where are we going to get these senior associates that are going to be in field, in charge, if we're not coming out of university, and the universities can't produce them because they won't have the skill set. So we developed a program now with a local university, a private one, where we're going to have a co-branded PwC university degree with these guys, where as part of their Bachelor of Commerce degree, there's going to be a digital side to it, there's going to be an audit side to it, that we are actually instructing on or providing the material so that they can be ready by the time they graduate. They would have already interned with us at least 3 months, if not once or twice, and they'll be ready to step into that position, right? From a consultant point of view, and people who are digitally, aware or digitally skilled already, this is where the consulting group is going to be looking. We're understaffed right now, I'll be honest, in that side, and it's the phrase "war for talent." I don't know if you ever heard this. I've been hearing it for the last 20 years, and it's never been truer, right? And that's the space where we're going to really have to go for it. But it's got to be aligned. Like I said, consulting is a huge space. We're in a market that's got specific segments where we can be specific, and we will know the talent we want to get. So this is where we will be doing more hiring going forward. I know that. And the hiring usually is in Croatia, at least, PwC, people want to come to us, right? We have a good reputation. We have a good reputation with people. So we do compete with, the McKinseys, Accentures, these guys, A.T. Kearney. These are the guys who are here in the market. We compete with them, but you know, we're the only big four that compete with them right now in terms of that drawing, you know, attracting that sort of talent, right? And when it comes to consultants, my experience has been, yeah, they want a lot of money, right? They want to get paid well, and they usually get what they want. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you so much for explaining that. It's a really detailed answer, and I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Worries. Thanks, Karen, for the question.
Thanks, Trevor. We can move to Antoana.
Yeah, awesome. First of all, thanks, John. Kind of felt full circle listening because I'm currently an assurance intern at UI in Vancouver.
Oh, right on.
Trying to go into consulting, so that was fun to hear. The one thing, you know, I just like to learn more about. So you talked a lot about building that selling side and, you know, trust with clients and everything. However, at the very entry level, right out of, you know, your Bachelor of Commerce level, you don't really have that much client interaction. Maybe I've just sat in some Teams meeting, just watching. So how do you go about starting that, especially at a younger age where you don't get that much involvement?
That's a great question, and you know, I don't think there's one answer to that. I would say, and I'm looking at this at my screen right now, saying you need to get uncomfortable to be successful. You need to suffer to win, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but if you want to do something when you're just coming in, obviously, you know, your network is going to be the people who graduated with you, and they're going to be in different places, but they're not going to really be clients. They might be somebody who you can work with, whether they're lawyers or something else, right? I think you've got to, you know, you got to look at every possible source you could have to find a client. That's something I didn't do when I was your age, and even when I initially came, because, you know, I was came to Croatia, I was overburdened with just everyday onslaught of information and stuff to do, right? So, you know, you get kind of thrown into it. But I think attending events, conferences, you know, even picking a subject matter or an industry that's interesting to you to get a little bit more knowledge, where you can maybe have a discussion with somebody who's maybe a bit more experienced with you and start building a relationship, right? It's interesting you say, so you don't really get to see, you don't get just necessarily get to deal with the decision makers, right? Which it makes sense at this point in time, but showing a desire to do so is one thing, okay? And trying to be a little bit, you know, resourceful is another thing, right? Where, like I said, conferences, I used to wonder what are conferences for, because when I was in the course, I was like, oh yeah, these guys just come here because they get free coffee, free snack, you know, it's catered, and they're not in the office. They get to not work, and it's all taken care of, right? But really the intention there is that you network and meet people, and you never know who you're going to meet. And I've been in places where I come to a conference, I don't know anybody there, and I feel stupid being there because you don't know anybody. But actually, that's the best possible position to be in, is that you don't know any, because if you already know them, then that's already ticked. That's done. You want to get people you don't know and start that way, right? And so, you know, I don't see other ways to do it apart from having some thought leadership that you come up with that's going to maybe, you know, blow the market at some point in time, right? That, you know, that could happen as well, right? Or at your client, you know, coming up with an idea because you know the business so well, say, hey, you know, this is, have you guys thought about this? And you get somebody to listen to it, right? And, you know, these are the things that I think would help you move faster towards that. But I understand where you're coming from 100%, believe me. I know the feeling very well.
For sure. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Antoine.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can move to Cornel now.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience and your journey. It was really informative, John. Just really interested on slide 4 or 5, I think it was, you touched on your people management. Just wondering what your approach and philosophy is on how you're coaching and building teams, and what do you define as a successful team?
So my philosophy, I can say, I think without a doubt, is you know, I don't believe in a fear factor sort of authoritative approach, but there's respect, right? And you know, I said one of the things I said, check your ego at the door, and I think I really do that now. It's easier to say than to do sometimes, but it's also when it comes to people and coaching. When I talk about it first as an individual, take the time to understand where that person's at. I say this because I've made mistakes, okay, in doing this, and trying to tick the box and get it done. Whereas when you take the time to sit down and just be unencumbered, I'm talking about really simple things now, but they're actually hard sometimes because you've got a lot of things going on, a lot of things on your plate. If you can focus on a person and one thing is to understand what they're coming. The other thing is to have the hard discussions, right? So I talked about areas for development. There's nothing you can do better for somebody than not just praise them. Is to talk about their areas for development that they probably aren't aware of. And to actually be able to talk about it, you actually have to do a bit of research. You have to do a bit of listening. You have to study them a bit. You have to, review, supervise. And what that I have found is that people see that, wow, not only do you care, I mean, you've taken the time to look at them. It's like a gift to them, right? And there's there's a multitude of benefits from that. One thing is that they'll get it. They'll understand, that they need to make changes. The other side is you're actually building some loyalty, right, to your team, one by one, right? I talked about, I did a lot of it through what we call coaching notes. So we have these digital files in audit, and then you review the work, and then you write a coaching note in the file. And, people have to respond to this, but what you've done is you've gone into the detail and said to them, this is, and you say it diplomatically, I mean, but, it's not crapping on somebody. It's just saying, listen, did you think about this? And for me, the best way to work is just asking questions, right? It's not to say, why didn't you do this? It's like, did you think about looking at this a different way? Did you think about, if this could be a factor here? Even the wording of this, again, I'm getting granular and detailed. I can't help it, but that's just, what I got to do. But that's what I find is being a successful way to be a mentor coach to somebody. It's appreciated and helps them grow. It actually helps you grow as well. A successful team for me is a team that has got a really good dynamic of communication. Because today, be it the virtual world or be it the physical world, communication has got to occur. It's got to occur from, the leader of a team and to the team members themselves, because there's each one of them in the end is going to be a leader somehow, or is a leader within that team, or they're going to have interaction with the client. And so, I had two phases in my career, I think, in terms of buzzwords. One was managing expectations. And now the last couple of years, I've been talking about articulation. It's like, really say what you're trying to get to, right? And within the team, if you can have this effective communication and escalation, because what we do, and if you're a consultant, you're going to be in a situation, you've got deadlines, you've got timelines, you've got a client who's screaming sometimes. You got to understand, you've got to obviously manage their expectations, but you got to have a team that knows how to escalate. And you have to have a tone at the top that says, we got to be open, we got to understand issues cannot be sitting on the back burner. It's got to be brought up front right away. And if the client screwed up, they got to know too, right? You got to hold them accountable as well, right? Again, recent experience has been, and I'm actually shocked by it, that last year COVID happened. We have a June 30th year end, so in the last quarter of our last year, so March to June last year, COVID started to hit us in terms of business, in terms of deferring or delaying our work. We've never built more overruns than then. So building overruns, actually come to the client and say, listen, and because I say that because in Croatia, you didn't have an overruns culture. We never really did that much before, unless it was absolutely blatant. And now, because the team's effective community means from top to bottom, because I have a director or a senior manager running the audit, but we got associates, university grads to people with 2-3 years experience, 5 years experience as senior associate. They're the ones who are in there. Nobody at the top can actually decide what the overruns. They got to have the communication, say, why is it there? So that documentation and effective communication within the team, if that can occur, and for me, if I build, $500,000 in overruns, man, that's unbudgeted for, and that's because the team was successful. It's a successful team. It was working really, really well. So that's one kind of definition from my side of an effective team or a successful team, is one that has great communication, and doesn't mean they're always performing really well, but when they're not, they know to mitigate and find a way to get through that, right? So it's this communication part, right? I hope that helps. So,
yeah, you bet. Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
no worries.
Okay, we have another question from Karen. Does anybody else any questions before we move to Karen? Yeah, I had one question. Nope. Okay, Karen, good to go.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, I just have a lot of questions. I think one that I have is, I guess something that I've learned, just like, so in full transparency, like right now I'm doing an internship at KPMG, which is like one of the rivals.
Yeah.
But after talking to a lot of people at different like big fours and in consulting in general, what I've learned is like, if you go horizontally to other countries, it's really hard to go vertically up. Because you have to start fresh with a new team, and that kind of stuff is what I've learned. And I grew up moving countries like every 2 years of my life growing up, so I want to move around a lot. Would you say that it's the same at PwC? Do you think, obviously you learn a lot by moving to other places, but you might be a couple of years set back? Do you think it's sort of worth the move? And do you think, like, what's your view on that kind of scenario?
I've got a couple of views on that, I'll be honest, because again, we've had many scenarios where people have moved across, actually within PwC even, so comments to the States, to London, whatever. I think actually it could be a way to move up quicker in many cases. And that just depends on circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it worked out great. I thought I had in the end a pretty decent route to get to where I'm at. But I've seen people, for instance, who've moved from PwC in Croatia or in Serbia to New York, and they're a manager here, and they put them as a senior associate. They brought them down a level when they came there, right? Which was absolutely ridiculous, right? At the same time, I've had people who come over at the same level and been promoted very quickly because they've proven they have quality, right? They belong, right? So I don't think there's a hard line answer on that. If you're switching countries, if you're switching organizations, that might depends on how well you sold yourself, right? It's almost like the football world, Karen. He's going across, he's a star. The manager made a great sale, right? But in this respect, it really is. If they're looking for somebody like you, and you're not the one making the application, you're the one responding to what they're asking for, I think you can go pretty quickly. When there's a need, nobody's going to care where you came from if you're delivering. I'll be honest, if you got the quality, right? It's not. I can't guarantee anything, but I mean that's my view on it, right? So that if you're coming across and you're providing what we need, if the business grows and you're doing well, you're gonna move up.
That makes sense. I just have a quick question, just like a very last one. Sorry for keeping everyone. It's just the last one. So I guess in terms of, everyone looks at consulting as sort of like exit opportunities. I know a lot of people go into it just so they can get out of it eventually, and it's like a very fast-paced environment. So I guess in your path, you sort of stayed in for like the long run, like you're there now. What's your take on like going out into industry and coming back versus just staying at one sort of firm for a while?
We're all different. For me, I left. I said I left E&Y and said I'd never be an auditor again, and only to eat my words. I couldn't believe that I did that. But I came around. When I came back, I was a more mature person. I had a bit different life experience, and I actually really, in the end, was so happy that's what I did. Right? It's the same thing when somebody leaves the industry or profession, and whatever they do, that time away from it is very important, because what happens both privately and professionally is very important, right? And I'm not going to undermine the private side as well. That also helps you get a perspective. Sometimes it makes you very hungry. The professional side also, I can't tell you the number of times I've had people leave PwC in Croatia saying, that's it, like I had enough. And sometimes within a month, sometimes within 2 years, they say, oh my God, it's so good. It was so good being with you guys because of the culture, understand? Because they went somewhere else and the grass is always greener, right? And that also helps gain a perspective for people. So when they do come back, if they do come back, they've got a fresh energy. They're the biggest ambassadors you could ever have, right? Because they've come back and they've seen another part of the world and they said, no, this is really, really good here. That's why I'm back. You guys don't understand how good this is, right? Especially people who are just, starting out. And then there's those people who leave and start their own business. Because there's a lot of consultants who will leave PwC, and some of them will just start their, with a couple of buddies, whatever, and they'll create a smaller boutique, and it's their cup of tea, and they're in control. I didn't make partner there, but I'm my own partner here now, and actually it's pretty good. And they're right; they're doing a good thing. And eventually, what happens there is that by jumping out of the sort of corporate ladder, they come into their own thing, and they develop a business. And maybe in the market they're, cheaper, but the quality is there because they have the experience, they have the know-how, and they build a business case. And what happens? Well, one of these big guys comes up and says, "Well, we want you now. We're going to take you back. Can you come in?" And they're either going to get a good payout or they're going to get a partnership or a really good role. And we're actually looking at one such group right now that the guys used to work for in our consulting practice, and we're looking at buying there. They have a tourism consulting business, and they're doing really well in 4 or 5 countries based in Croatia. It's just what we need. We don't have it, right? Because consulting is a big area. And so I think sometimes jumping out and coming back is a great idea from the point of view of perspective, experience, and you learn to have a great perspective of where you were and come back to it. At the same time, the employer himself is going to say, we're going to look at you differently now as well because you're coming back with something that we really need, right? So I think it's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah, no, it's a really unique take. Thank you for answering all my many questions, for everyone here, for organizing, and also for letting me ask so many questions. I appreciate it.
No problems.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Really good questions. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Excellent.
Anybody else wants to ask something? We're already 1 hour and 36 minutes. So John, are you still okay?
I'm wired now, man. I'm wired. I'm ready to go.
Wired. Who hasn't sat him? Carl, you want to ask something? Alan, David? Not much. Carl?
Well, and I just wanted to say, this is 1 hour and a half, John, and it's the first time that we have somebody speaking so long. So that tells a lot about the level of interest of this presentation. That was really great. Thank you very much for your availability and the time you dedicate to us. We learn a lot. There will be a big list of takeaway that we have, but the cultural component that you give is to me resonates a lot. We are all here in the club, and here the attendance coming from most of us coming from different regions. We try to achieve something in common, but when we dig a little bit further, we realize that we have all different background, different values actually originally, and it's not always easy to understand each other and to work all together. And it's actually a source of richness when we realize what we bring. It is very interesting. So thank you for sharing that. That gives some hope actually on the future of our careers.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Carl. That's like I said, the cultural side is very important. If I didn't say it, I will say that the moment I became CEO, it was announced online. The response I got from clients and business community was amazing, and even the first couple of months, I was shocked because what people were actually saying is that we know you're a good person, and you have the values we like, and that's why we want to work with you. And that's a huge statement for me. And it talks about culture, and it talks about values, right? And in a nutshell, actually, even on this I didn't even get to recruitment thought. Sorry, I didn't even talk about this and the values we have at PwC. But you know, apart from work ethic, it's the fact that people really care about who you are, and the technical knowledge. In a lot of cases, it's kind of a given that you have it. It's what else are you bringing to the table, right? So what I'd say to everybody, if I can, you know, be so bold as to be able to say this, is that, you know, always believe in yourself and what you have. You've got something, and now you're going to fine tune it. You're going to find your path somewhere. And I say this is a guy. I'm a guy who, believe it or not, you know, didn't believe I was, and I believe I'm very smart, but I have intellect, and you got to work with things. But if you have the ability to relate and talk to people and communicate, especially today, that goes a long way. That's going to go a long way. And I know I'm saying this from a position where I'm at right now. It's easy to say, but the last 25 years has proven it to me. You know, this is what it is. And patience is a virtue. And yeah, there's suffering, but when I say suffering, it's the fun suffering. You're enjoying the process, the journey, the route. You're on a you know, you're on a route that's taking you somewhere good, right? And just believe in yourself. But the cultural differences are definitely something that you know, have benefited me and the approach, right? And I think you guys being in Vancouver, in Canada, I always say it's the best people in the world come from this part of the world, right? So that's what I always say to people I talk to, right?
So when's your next trip to Vancouver, John?
I'm hoping it's this year. You know, I'm vaccinated. I've had COVID. I can travel. I don't know what the Canadian government is saying now about people coming in, and how difficult that'll be or how expensive it'll be. But I'd love to come this fall, to be honest, right? If I could.
Yeah, I think they're opening it for fully vaccinated tourists. It's gonna be open. Yeah.
If you're coming in, then we gotta have you somewhere on campus.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I'm definitely after this. We've got to meet in person. If anything, we're gonna have.
Yeah, just give us a heads up, like at least a week or so we can organize, and
sure.
At least we can, you know, have a meal together. But maybe if you give us enough time, maybe we can create a more interactive event, and maybe invite a few other speakers we had, and
sure
gather around the topic. That would be a whole new thing.
We'd love to do it, and maybe I'll bring some Croatian rakia.
That's
a little bit of the, you know.
For the after party, yeah. The rocket fuel.
Yeah, the rocket fuel. You got to spice it up a little bit, right? So.
Well, I think I haven't told these guys much about it, but I have to introduce them to the whole culture of the beverage.
Yeah, it's listen, you know, I'm not an alcoholic. Don't ever get the wrong idea, but that's another thing. If you're having meals or whatever, you can't avoid at least a shot of something beforehand, just to prepare the palate for what's coming next, right? So I'd love to do that in Vancouver too. So that'd be good. I'd love to do that with you guys.
That's amazing. Well, any other last minute? Oh, Alan.
That's me, buddy.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much. I think your personality really came through on the presentation, and it's clear. I think you are being that nice guy, and the nice guy definitely helped you out. One of the things that I heard you say was about hiring people not for that grunt work at the bottom, where you're creating programs and you're factoring or outsourcing that out to services firms.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask kind of like the inverse, in that for the people here on the call, the MBA students, the PhD students, you know, how does it look for them, the entry into consulting? Is it looking better or is it looking worse? Because sometimes I look at it and I think the firms want fodder for their meat grinder, essentially at the bottom. And then those people just drop out after 2 years, and the very few select rise up. But can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, just to make it clear, when we like send that work out, it's actually within PwC. So PwC has set up their own service delivery centers in these places. Okay, it's primarily focused on the audit practice, but there are other sort of services that they do offer that our other lines of service can use. On the consulting side, and when I say consulting, so I want to differentiate between, you know, audit and assurance with consulting, because consulting to me is it's a very high value, intense profession or line of service for us, right? There, you know, consultants have to come from somewhere, okay? And I used to always think that you know, they were coming from not just Big Four, but it's only, you know, people got a business degree, but a lot of the consultants are engineers, and they come up with, you know, different experiences, and they decide, you know, I can be a consultant instead of working at an engineering firm or whatever firm they're working at, and that happens, right? But you still need and you want, and you know, maybe Big Four, PwC is not the best to refer to in this. If we're going to look at true consulting, we're looking at McKinsey's, Accenture's. These guys are still, you know, looking for people out of university big time. Okay, they're still grabbing. My experience and my knowledge right now is here like that. We are also still looking at that. We still want to get into the game. So, you know, back in the early 2000s, PwC sold its consulting business to IBM. And then we had a non-compete for several years. And then, you know, close to 2010 or whatever, we started to build again, right? And we're still building that. And that's a global situation, right? In some countries like the US and Canada, it's gone faster because of the markets. Here it went a little bit slower, but it's picking up. So I still see the opportunity for people coming out of, you know, UBC or somewhere else like that to have the chance to step in and start working, right? Is it fodder? Are they going to grind it? They want to get the best, of course they do, right? They get the best out of you, and they want the best to rise to the top, you know, and is that going to change? I don't know. I think with us, with PwC, it's a little bit different. We're not going to grind everybody out. We don't, you know, we need bodies, right? And we need to build that. And that part of the practice is not so much, you can't send that out to a service center. You know, that's experience, that's clickers, that's people who are thinking, working fast. What we're sending out is stuff that is really low value, repetitive stuff that is more to do with compliance work, not with the sexy consulting side of stuff where you got these, you know, innovative projects, different projects, people thinking of different things. And, you know, you can't compare the two, right? To me right now. So I don't think you have anything to worry about. Obviously the starting point is, we all worry about that. I've been there. I've been a student. I've been in Vancouver saying, well, you want people to experience, how am I supposed to get experience? You don't give it to me. I know that whole feeling, but the market's still there for that, you know, from my point of view.
Thank you very much, John.
No problem.